Hello, everybody. So today we're going to get into the Middle East geography, and I'm actually going to start off by talking about kind of the most notable feature of this area, which would be the desert. So let's get into it. Basically, the area that we're talking about here in the Middle East is really the Middle East and North Africa. So really the area from Morocco across to Algeria through to Egypt. Pretty much this area here all the way to Iran, not Afghanistan, to Iran. This area is linked by common climate, geographic features, culture, things like that. The most identifiable feature that I'm going to focus on here today, of course, is the deserts. And this is a huge area of the Middle East. And one of the big things I want you to understand about the deserts, and if I jump to here, so as you can see, these are the arid areas of the world, and the darker the red, the extreme arid zone. So you can see the Middle East has a lot of this area from right here, the Thar Desert, and just move our way over, Arabian Desert, Sahara Desert. So what you're going to have here is not necessarily a huge population. You're going to have a population that is spread out. It's going to be very dense in certain areas and then basically non-existent in other areas. Again, because of the deserts. There is limited water in this area. That's actually a different video that you're going to watch, or that you can watch if you want. And so you build cities either by the coasts, on what rivers you have, and other than that, it's going to be very spread out. However, as a result, you do have many nomadic groups that go through here, because particularly with these deserts and then part of the Arabian Desert, you do have oases, which I'll get into. But the most identifiable feature here, of course, is the Sahara Desert. So many people know about it. It is the largest desert in the world. It is 3.6 million square miles. What does that mean? It means you can put the United States into the Sahara Desert. Dunes can be 600 feet high. Thousands of millions of years ago, this was a lush rainforest, and a sea was here. It's called the Tethys Sea, or the Tethys Sea, where there were crocodiles, and even millions of years before that, this area had dinosaurs. I mean, this is pretty beautiful area. But around 5,000 to 8,000 years ago, it stopped raining, and thus there it is. Very little rain in this zone. It did snow in Algeria in 2012 and Egypt in 2013. Although there are microclimates, I mean, everything's a desert, but certain areas are much drier than others. Some areas have oases, some do not. Some have mountains, some do not. Different parts of the desert do have different climates. As a result of that, again, as I mentioned before, there's a series of oases that allow nomadic tribes to live in this area. Heat is a danger, but really things like sandstorms or the cold at night is a bit more dangerous to you. Here's that great picture of the 2013 snow. I just think that's wild. Real picture. This is part of the Dune Sea in the Sahara Desert. What's so crucial to understand about this is I do have the picture there of the camel, and this is transformative. Humans, thousands of years ago, were able to domesticate camels in both this part of the world as well as Asian camels as well. And this is why we can live in the desert. I mean, truth be told, like without camels, it's really, really hard to live in the desert, especially because there are things here that people would trade, especially in parts of West Africa. There's gold and salt and things like that, and able to get these resources out, or just to travel back and forth between where there's water, the camel is crucial for that. So this is something that is important to understand. Like the role of the camel is very, very important in human history. Not quite say the level of like the horse, but it's up there and very, very important for desert dwellers. Here's an example of a big sandstorm coming in. You got to go run and hide. Obviously, if you're in a building, you're probably going to be fine. It blows over pretty quick. But if you're caught out in it and it's a long one, it could cause you some problems. You can get sand in your lungs, which is no good. So, when they know one's coming, let's get inside. The Sahara Desert is very interesting because it's super old. And as a result, the sand grains are very, very fine and almost like mini ball bearings. And so as a result, you have sandboarding, as you can see people here doing in the Sahara and other desert areas of the world. But the Sahara is where you can go to some of the best because they do have the biggest dunes. You do have to be careful if you catch an edge here and land. That sand is really, really hard when you land and you spit it up and it's bad, but kind of a fun sport that is developed as a result. And again, here's an example of like a small oasis. You also have underground water, and people are able to build wells in places like Morocco and Libya. And then out in places like Iran, you have a good amount of underground water that has allowed people to live there. You do have some rivers, which I'll talk about in the next video. But this underground water has been crucial. And some of these areas can be really big. This is the Al Hassa Oasis. This is in Saudi Arabia. It's 30,000 acres in size. I mean, it's huge. You look at this stuff. It's got like all this water. So you can see here, it's like a little mini Grand Canyon. And you see all of those, incredible like date palm trees. It's really remarkable. Dates like super good for you. However, there is a really, really dry area, the Ruba Kali, the empty quarter. This is the largest sand desert in the world because it's the only thing that's there is sand. No mountains, nothing else. It's 250,000 square miles. Again, just like the Sahara thousands of years ago. Hippos, fish, buffalo, cattle, but the weather changed, climate change, because it does change over time, and then boom, incredibly dry, no water, nothing lives there. Nothing. But it is super important. It's super important because it is the most oil-rich area in the world, and we use oil like a lot, like a whole lot. And this is something that you have to be aware of, and something that it is really, really important to this region, which we'll talk about. The largest percentage of the world's oil is in the Middle East, and that's a big issue that we'll be talking about in a separate video as well. But hopefully this gives you a sense of just like what it's like to live in the desert, how widespread the desert area is in this particular place in the world, and we'll talk about some other areas in the Middle East in the next video. Okay, guys? Good to see you. Take care.